Hey, this is Cameron, and welcome to the reaction log. Whoa! I think it's about time we got into this video, right? I mean, the views say that I should maybe do this again. We got a Jacob Collier video in store for us, and not just a Jacob Collier video. We got a Charles Cornell video about Jacob Collier that got 2.7 million views, mind you. 2717117. The last Jacob Collier video that I made, it was on his Wired video where he got 5 musicians and explained a concept, the concept of harmony, I believe, in 5 different levels. And I was all pissy because on number 4 was a classical pianist, professional classical pianist, and then number 5 was a professional jazz pianist. And I was like, you know, what's the deal with that? Now, obviously, the jazz guy was Herbie Hancock. You can argue about like the fame. It wasn't like Yusha Wong in Spot 4. It was some guy who I've never heard of. But any classical musician, even the worst classical concert pianist, still has like hours of concept rep memorized at like a really high level. They're just no one to sneeze at. So it's just the idea of like Jacob just having to explain harmony to him was just kind of funny. They're all just pro musicians. Not to say that they can't teach each other things. I know a lot of you disagree with this, but even Jacob learns things every day. Somebody commented on the last Jacob Collier video that I made, and he said, "Trust me when I tell you, there's nothing that a professional pianist could teach Jacob." Really? Nothing at all? With respect, I'm sure he's great. Jacob is legit genius virtuoso. And I'm not arguing with that. He is, for sure. But I think Jacob would probably cringe a little bit at you saying that he has nothing else to learn and he doesn't learn from anybody. Because somebody who is as smart and like creative as Jacob, I guarantee you, is learning stuff every day. And you do know that when you learn things every day, it means that you didn't know that stuff the day before. Like, there's a reason why Jacob was so tight with Herbie Hancock. He secured him spot number 5. He probably learned from him, or has learned, or is learning from him. Do you think Herbie Hancock could teach him anything? I would say probably. I would say the professional pianist could probably also. It was just funny watching Jacob like explain like kind of basic things, like just his idea of the undertone series. Because I mean, if you're a professional musician, you think about music a lot. Let's actually see who invented negative harmony. Ernest Levy, Theory of Harmony. I guess he talked about it in there in 1985. Kind of recent. He looks like a guy who would think about negative harmony. Ultimately, what I want you to get from this is that I'm insanely jealous and I have no idea what I'm talking about. What else do you want from me? Let's get into the video, shall we?
Negative harmony, A4.
Negative harmony, look at that. I already brought it up. A432 tuning. Does Jacob Collier perpetuate A432 tuning? I thought that was like for spiritual people who think that it like resonates with the earth or something. Some people believe that tuning instruments in A432 is more harmonious and in tune with nature than the standard 440. With nature, just, you know, nature. This belief is based on a combination of numerology, scientific theories, and subjective experiences. Big highlight on the last one there. The Schumann resonance, the idea that Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat, let's personify the Earth while we're at it, resonates at 8 hertz. Is that even true? I'm pretty sure I've heard on like Adam Neely that it's like almost 8 hertz or something. So if you actually do the math, it doesn't even work out even with 432. Scientific pitch, the idea that C equals 8 hertz. Well, scientific pitch, that we're not talking about science here. What does that matter? And why should C equal 8 hertz? Why? Because it's like a number without any decimal points? Okay. What's more important to you? C being 8 hertz, and note that you'll never actually hear. The range of hearing is like between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Why would we be looking at the subsonic notes to determine what our actual notes that we're hearing are going to be? Subjective experience, the idea that music tuned to A432 is easier to listen to. Like, according to who? And clearer? Wouldn't it be muddier because it's lower? It's more in tune to nature. You already said that. Why am I looking at the AI overview? I am AI at this point, right? All right, go on.
Microtonal harmony. What is everybody talking about, and why are musicians so obsessed with Jacob Collier?
Yeah, let's see. Why am I so obsessed with Jacob Collier? Because he gives me views. Views. My highest viewed video is Jacob Collier. This would sound so much better in 432 though, don't you think? It might be. Does Jacob regularly do 432? Let's see. Oh god, I'm back to these freaking AI overviews. I'm so sorry if I'm spreading misinformation. But yes, Jacob Collier is known to frequently use A432 tuning. Why, dude? What are his reasonings? He doesn't do it for like the reasons that other people do it though. I mean, he says like in this, he'll start in A432 in this piece and then he ends up modulating by microtone to A440. See, that's epic. I like that. But just picking like an arbitrary reason why you're gonna start tuning in A432 just because you think it's like more in tune with nature. If you think it sounds better, I respect that opinion way more than you saying that it's in tune with nature, because that's dumb. But anyways, all right, let's go. Let me look. I need to know what the actual Schumann resonance is, because I'm pretty sure it's not just 8. Oh, 7.83. Oh man, that throws your numbers way off. I don't even know how to do the math on that. All right, why do we like Jacob?
For those of you who don't know, Jacob Collier is a musician. He's a multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, arranger, everything in between. And he has taken the music community by storm with some of his outrageously inventive and unusual sounds.
Yeah, sped up, it's a little crazier, isn't it? See, I think one of the most genius things about Jacob is not his music or his wacky harmonic ideas. It is his ability to change his hair in 8 unique different styles. It takes more than just talent to be successful like Jacob is, because Jacob is highly successful. A lot of people know who he is. Granted, none of my non-musician friends know who he is, but everyone who's a musician definitely knows who he is. But if my non-musician friends have a chance in heck to know who he is, it is not because of his music, but because of his style, his ability to differentiate 8 different Jacobs with just hair alone. I mean, look at that. It's so, like, these two are not the same. And even, like, the lighting, like, changing the lighting on one side, it does a lot. Who owns 8 shirts like this? I own, like, 4 shirts and a sweatshirt, and you can get all of them down at Rootin's Delight. Head on down over to Rootin's Delight, pick yourself up some merch. Oh, and look at that. I just got a email inquiring about guitar lessons. Hey, if you want some classical guitar lessons, I play classical guitar. You know, check out my playing in the shorts if you want to see what I sound like. You can also check out my recordings and performances catalog. It has 1 item in it right now. It's a fugue with like questionable interpretive ideas. I'll grant it that, but we're working on that. Let's hear your freaking fugue. Sorry, I don't mean to get defensive. I'm sorry. Let's get into this Jacob video.
And I think it's relatively safe to say that the vast majority of musicians, such as myself, are completely hooked. So what is it about Jacob's music?
Completely hooked. I don't know. I've gone through one phase of my life that lasted like a few months where I listened to Jacob Collier's, like, one of his first albums or his first album, the In My Bedroom album. But I never really revisited it like I have with other stuff. Maybe I will going forward. I haven't listened to any of his new stuff, to be fair. I am just making a video about Jacob with not many preconceived notions other than what I've watched with you guys and some stuff independently, but not really much. So you know what you're getting into.
Jazz is often looked at as the musician's music, and I think its popularity and...
Yeah, jazz is the musician's music. Classical guitarist gets butthurt by that statement.
I think perhaps the most prolific area in which he has affected everybody in the music world is undoubtedly harmony. Jacob has put in the time and effort to understand harmony on a level that I certainly have not taken the time and effort to do, and I think a lot of people also have not, which is why so many of the things that he has done in music has kind of brought to light ideas that people like myself never have thought of before. One of the very first videos he put out, which became really popular, was his cover of Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely?
Ooh. Yeah, that's an interesting question. How do you put the time in to understand harmony? Like, honestly, I know this isn't going to be like a super popular opinion, but I really do think that a formal education in like some sort of either classical or jazz theory is going to be really helpful. Because the whole thing with Jacob is that everything is like really out of the box, but it is all based in something. And I know I said like random notes, random chords last time. I know it's not actually random. It is all based in conventions that have existed for like decades and decades, and in the case of classical, like hundreds of years. It can all be found in like college classes that you might take. And like he said, without that foundation, you're gonna have a really hard time understanding anything that Jacob does. Because, and I promise you, Jacob has that foundation. Just like everyone who makes this kind of music does. Even if they know it or not, they have the foundation. Now, the ways of getting the foundation, some people can just soak it up like a sponge, and maybe they were just exposed to it when they were children, like that one commenter was saying Jacob maybe was. And that may be true, and guess what? That's not you. That isn't you, that's not me, that's not anybody watching, except for maybe like none of you actually, because like probably only a few thousand people are going to watch this. It's not any of you, don't worry. If it goes above 20,000, It's one of you. If one of you is Jacob. If it hits 40,000, it may be Jacob and then somebody else. How do you get a formal education exactly? Honestly, what I recommend, pick up any music theory textbook. It could be classical oriented, it could be jazz oriented. They will feed into each other, because I've read both. Now, granted, more like classical harmony stuff, but I've at least thumbed through like jazz textbooks, and a lot of the harmony, like when it comes to voice leading and stuff, it's pretty similar, and it's a lot of the same circle fifth stuff, and just ways of modulating to other places, ways of resolving. It can kind of just be summed up to that. I would personally suggest look at a classical textbook first. That's just me. And then just take the time to just go through that. Like when I took my classes in college, we spent 2 years on music theory and aural skills, and I would suggest like find any textbook and just parse it out into 2 years and just learn it and do all the quizzes at the end of the chapters, see if you can understand it. And if you don't learn anything from that, at least you'll know what is taught in schools, which is kind of a useful thing to know. Like at least you're not guessing, like if you didn't go to school, like, oh, what if they learned something that like, I don't know. You'll learn like at least what they learned in the theory classes, because that's what they use, just any textbook. For example, I learned from this one, 2 years, A Concise Introduction to Tonal Harmony. It starts with like identifying notes, and then it ends all the way with like augmented 6 chords and Neapolitan 6 and all that. Looking at the last chapters here, like sonata form is the last one, and all the conventional harmony of that. And there's tests at the end of every chapter. You can pick one of those up for like $100, or you can find them used somewhere. I don't know, go to Goodwill. I'm sure people donate stuff like that all the time. It can be any of those textbooks though. But anyways.
Various really talented singers and musicians doing this multi-tracking, let me make myself into my own chorus type of thing, which you've seen me do here on this channel, and many, many other people have done it as well. That certainly was not a new thing, but what this video did that struck such a chord, great, I will show myself out. What this video did that was so impactful for so many people was it took that general concept of multi-tracking your own voice and harmonizing yourself, and it just blew it wide open with these really elaborate jazz voicings and really, really intelligent harmonic writing that, quite honestly, in this particular application on YouTube, nobody'd really ever heard before.
I love when he goes high up there.
Truly the angels best. Oh, I'm so happy, I'm so happy. We have been heaven last.
And then to almost nobody.
Yeah. Okay. I do love his acapella stuff, and my favorite track from him is his Flintstones thing, mainly because of the melodica solo. That thing is freaking face melting. I'm sure I've shown it before.
Probably to almost everybody's, wow, thanks for making me feel terrible about myself. We got multi-instrumentalist Jacob.
You don't have to be a baby about it, dude. When I see people who are better than me online, that doesn't make me feel like, oh, I feel so terrible about myself. It's just so silly to feel that way. And I hear it all the time. And like, you can probably come at me because it looks like I'm trying to like convince myself that I'm the best and convince everyone. I know that I'm not the best. Never think that I'm the best. Like, I am not at a professional level, and I know that. I'm at an advanced student level when it comes to like classical guitar. I would like to be at a professional level like over the next like decade, and I do believe that I can do that. I think I'm making pretty good time, but you know, there's a lot to learn. See any like 4-year-old pianist who already has the Well-Tempered Clavier memorized. I mean, so what? It's fine. I've been alive for longer. Like, I'm sure that my musical ear is probably better. Now, like when they're my age, they're gonna be like insane phenoms on piano. Sure, that's fine, but that's not really my thing anyways, you know? Nothing comes easy to me. Nothing comes easy to you either. We have to work and train for this, and that's okay. And the great thing about music is that there is no end, and as far as I can tell, there's no real like diminishing returns when it comes to it. If you guys are into like fitness and stuff, you might have been on like fitness YouTube. Something that I noticed with that is that these people will train for like 3 years, and then they'll train for another 10 years, and they just look the same. They just make no gains, or they like get on steroids, and then like for another 3 years they make gains, and then they look the same after 6 years for the next like decade. And it seems like there's all these like scientific videos just about chasing these gains, and there are just no gains to be made. Like, you can look at guys like Sam Sulek. Like, he like popped off like a year and a half ago. He looks the same as he ever has. Like, all these guys, like Jeff Nippard. Like, I've watched like Jeff Nippard's videos, but he looks exactly the same for the last like 10 years. So when they're talking about these like advancements and like studies for like making more gains, it's like, I guess you made all the gains already. I guess just like training any old way just kind of worked out for you, huh? You know, not to be mean like to them. I'm sure they don't care about this at all. There's no way they're watching this thing. But I mean, it's a thing though. Like, you kind of just train for 3 years and you just look the best you're gonna look. That's what it seems like to me. But it's not like that for music. Like, you can just spend your whole life just learning a fugue and a sonata every year for like 60 years. And you will be better when you're 40 than when you're 20, and better when you're 60 than when you're 40, if you stay diligent and practice the same amount and just keep learning and learning. There are no diminishing returns to it. And people will try to tell you that there are, but those people, I bet you, haven't practiced practice for several hours a day for 20 years straight, okay? It's easy to practice for like a few hours for like a few weeks in a row or whatever. Do it for 20 years. Now, obviously, if your practice is stale and you're practicing the same stuff over and over, you might not make your musical gains. But if you keep pushing, and there's no even equivalent steroids, except for maybe like Adderall or something, but you know, like you don't need that. But just keep pushing and you will make gains, like just linear gains over your whole life. That's why music's awesome. There's no end to it. And that's why when I see comments like that one, where is it? He definitely knows and understands classical music at the highest level. He doesn't need lessons from anyone when it comes to theory. That's such a ridiculous idea. Theory is not just one thing to study. Like you could hone in on one subsect of theory and like specialize in that. And even just saying jazz and classical, it's like there's so many subsects of that. It's more than just playing the notes. It's like interpretation and like I'm sure like in jazz, like the feel or like different ideas you would use in like your improv. Like I'm sure you can specialize and you could learn a lot from other people. It doesn't matter who you are, Jacob or anyone. He's not God. That's what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm just like ranting right now. I don't mean to. Yeah! Oh god!
The biggest difference between what Jacob was doing and what a lot of other multi-track vocalists were doing before that, he was just taking what might have been simple harmony and writing vocals as though he was playing the piano.
Jazz vocalists figured out how to play piano. Oh god, we're screwed.
A lot of that came from two things. It would come from utilizing upper extensions and alterations in a way to make it sound more interesting. For example, rather than playing a very, very simple 2-5-1 like this, or even more
I don't get it.
spread out.
I like the last chord of that. Everything else leading up to it, I don't get.
It's basically utilizing the upper extensions of the chord to create much more rich, colorful harmonies. Now, this has always been a goal of arrangers and writers to write things for each part that make sense. You know, if you've ever been in chorus and you've ever been, I don't know, an alto, you've probably been plagued with having to sing one note for what seems like an eternity, or just in general, very boring parts to sing. While for some choruses, maybe when you're in elementary school or middle school, it's a little simpler. It makes it so that individual parts are just not that good.
Here, let me actually slow it down. I feel this is extremely subjective, but he does feel the need to clarify. Listen, all these parts are moving in sensible and interesting ways. I know that you can hear it, and maybe you can come to that conclusion yourself, but just first take my word for it. Hold on.
Good. Not
Now, are you gonna tell me that if you isolated one of those, that it wouldn't just be or just like or just something? I feel like it's a bit much to say everything could stand alone well and they all moved in like sensible and interesting ways. Like it was the whole, and there are a lot of supporting parts to that, so I don't know.
shying away from extremely complex inner voice movements and tons of alterations. It was a
There were those, but there was also a lot of
that
you guys like when I do that? Does that sound good?
really took everybody by surprise. And since then, we've seen, of course, that evolve into things like negative harmony, microtonal harmony, crazy things that very few people have ever really thought to apply in actual performance. Now, I'm not going to get...
Yeah, maybe so in actual performance, but as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is stuff that's like been around. I want that to be clear, because I feel like when you go in like the subreddits all the time, like, because they hear Jacob talking about it, like he's the inventor of it. Maybe to use it in performance, I'll concede to that. I'd say that he's probably like brought it into the limelight of sorts. I would agree with that.
Super in-depth into the inner workings of the actual harmonic devices and other things that Jacob uses in his music, because he does a ton of this stuff really regularly. And if you go to his channel, which I'll link below, he routinely does these logic breakdown sessions where for hours on end, he'll go through one of these pieces that he's done and break down the logic session and actually show you all the individual parts and how he kind of put it all together. And it's a little bit terrifying how much of a wizard this dude is with logic, but it's really, really insightful to be able to see how he's actually putting all this stuff together.
I can say whatever I want to. If you have a logic file that looks like that, it's obvious that you care, and I respect that. That's pretty cool, especially if he's breaking all that down. I've never actually watched a logic breakdown from his, but I bet that you would learn a lot from it. Why don't you go and watch his video right now? Just click off, go watch his video. I won't be mad at you. It's fine.
There's a very, very lengthy interview series that June Lee, who's a phenomenally talented writer and arranger, actually did with Jacob. He sat down with him for, I think it was over an hour, and just talked about a lot of these really, really in-depth musical concepts.
Number one, can you tell us more about the super, ultra, hyper, mega, meta lydian scale and how you would use it
The what a lydian scale?
in your improvisation?
Well, let me tell you.
Personally,
Oh, well, you can't just hold on now. Okay, well, we need to learn about that. Let's give Collier some respect here and put him on normal.
So, how many of you guys have heard of Lydian?
I've heard of Lydian. Say it with me. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7.
How many of you guys have heard of Super Lydian?
That's why I'm here.
Okay, yeah. How many of you guys have heard of super, ultra, hyper, mega, meta lydian?
You didn't even explain super lydian. Which, by the way, I've seen this video. Also, if we look up super, ultra, hyper, mega, meta lydian, Jacob did coin that term, so asking a crowd, have you ever heard of this thing that I made up the name of? I feel like it's a little cheap, but alright, let's keep going.
If we put lydian in thirds, like this, this
Yeah.
is a familiar sound, it's nice. It's strong, and I'll tell you why, because it's got fifth here, a fifth here, a fifth here, and a fifth here. It's a really strong sound.
There are a lot of fifths in the diatonic scale.
Now, in
Oh,
your
wait.
jazz textbooks, you may have read that a lydian ends there and it begins again. Like that.
Yeah, scales do repeat at the octave. Our jazz and classical textbooks might have taught us that at some point.
I disagree with this.
How do you disagree with that? What does that mean? What do you mean? I get, like, having an option where that's something that you can follow and then you can also not follow. Disagreeing with it's pretty crazy. Let's hear the justification.
Premise, and I've decided that it keeps going, right? So this is C major 7. This is D major 7, right?
Got it.
Now I do believe there is a C sharp in this voicing, and it's a C major 7. But I also believe that it sounds better than this. This sounds better than that. This is killing, man. This sounds great. Thus, the super lydian thing is born. So
I believe what he's saying here is just that, like, he's starting, let's say G, because I'm playing guitar. I'm going to start Lydian, and then on the 5th scale degree, I'm going to pretend like I'm on D now, and I'm just going to play D Lydian. And then on the 5th scale degree of that, and then I run out of frets and I can't play anymore because I don't have a keyboard. Which is cool. It kind of reminds me of like tetrachords, 4-note set of notes like separated by step. I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm an idiot thinking that, but it kind of reminds me of like a tetrachord of whole steps, like root and then whole, and then just starts a new one there. And then, like, you can think of it like that, which, like, that's just kind of an association, like a random one. I also just see that as, like, you're just going through the circle of fifths, just going to the right. So we're starting in G. And then it's just kind of acting as a 5 of 5 with that Lydian sharp 4 sound. I don't know. Like, if you wanted to see what that looks like, it would just be like a 1 chord. And then a 5 of 5, resolving to the 5 of your original key. But you're just playing it all as like 1 chord, I guess, which is what he's doing. Which is cool. It is cool.
you can keep going, man. No one told you to stop, really, other than all of your teachers.
And that is the issue that I have with it. Even if he's correct in that, saying that, oh, all of your teachers told you to, like, not do that, it's probably because they wanted you to, like, pass the test and, like, repeat things at the octave. Like, if they ask you for a Lydian scale, like a C Lydian, they don't want you to play a C Lydian and then, like, a G Lydian on top of it and then a D Lydian on top of it and just keep going forever and ever. They just want you to learn what Lydian is. You can't play the super, ultra, meta, mega Lydian scale if you don't even learn what Lydian is in the first place. I just feel like that kind of language, because I see it a lot in the comments too, this anti-education, anti-school language. I wouldn't be able to understand any of this, which you can argue if I even understand it at all, which, like, screw you, I do. Like, to some extent, obviously, I think. I wouldn't be able to before going to school. It would be so hard for me to comprehend any of this, because I spent years actually taking theory classes, which is the foundation for all of this stuff that he's talking about. And then saying, like, oh, all of your teachers are telling you not to do it, as if, like, you're wasting your time with your teachers. That's completely stupid and, like, wrong. Like, Jacob had teachers that brought him to this place. And we all like to act like we're, like, once we get to some advanced level, like we're geniuses. Like, we just went outside and heard the birds chirping and we learned the rhythms that way. We learned it from nature. But no, you learn it from intensive study. That commentator even talked about how Jacob, like, grew up in a musical family. Yeah, they were his teachers. They exposed him to these conventions early on, and then he's doing his own thing with them later. But there's still this foundation that's extremely important. If you ignore that foundation, you will get nowhere. Or even if you do get somewhere, you'll have no idea what you're doing. And if you know what you're doing, you can break rules and come back to them at will. Like, it's just a more fulfilling and thoughtful place to be. I wouldn't trade my music education for anything. And there's no part of me that thinks that any teacher who told me not to do something was like a waste of my time. I enjoy learning the conventions, and I enjoy, like, breaking the rules too. Like, it's fun. That's my point with that. Oh man, I actually have to teach a lesson right now. I'll come back to this, but I'll end with this story. Remember that guy that I brought on? If you watch teach my fugue analysis, he's like a super genius theory guy. And I met him in college, and he like exempted out of all the theory classes because he didn't need it. He wasn't just born a genius. He doesn't have perfect pitch. He told me how he did it. He took a theory class in high school, and he took the textbook home, and having only been a guitar player, he sat down at a piano and went through every single chapter, played every example, and fully comprehended everything. And by the time he went through the entire book, which took him like a year or so, and when I first met him before I had gone through my theory classes, I couldn't even talk to him about theory. And then after my 2 years of studying theory, I can finally like have a conversation with him. And then just talking to him over years and years, he just has such an advantage having this stuff in his mind already. And now when he consumes things, like when he looks up like fugue interpretations, he already has this like super helpful foundation. And it wasn't magic. It was just taking the time to learn it. And again, the best way to do that, I think, or like a really great way, is just pick a book of your choice. Any of them will do, any theory book. I prefer a classical book because I think, you know, I'm a classical guitarist. What do you want? But you can probably pick a jazz one too and it'll be fine. And just go through it. I disagree with like some of that rhetoric he's using, like the anti-teacher thing, because I think that it can lead people to think that like formal education is stupid. And it seems like Jacob has benefited greatly from it. And I know I have benefited greatly from it. So I just don't want to have people not think that it's important and you can just kind of do whatever, because he didn't learn this from the birds chirping outside. He learned this from teachers. Like, he just did. And his early stuff is him, like, doing covers of standards, like Stevie Wonder stuff. Like, he studied this music. Like, he didn't just learn it miraculously because he's a genius. All right, I have to teach a lesson. So, I just taught students. I just taught 4 children in a row. And I've had some time to sort of calm down and reflect. I've been saying a lot of stuff here about, like, a very accomplished musician. I need to take a chill pill. I recognize that. What kind of turned me off from it was just his language and saying that, like, your instructors won't show you this or your instructors will tell you not to do this. I just feel it's so easy to get upset at school for, like, dismissing your, like, creative ideas when usually the point of school is to, like, do an assignment to show that you understand the concept. It's not to show that you can be creative with the concept yet. You want to just learn the concept first. So, I mean, for example, like, Jacob Collier in this setting, he is being our teacher, and he's literally saying teachers will tell you not to do this. And it's like, dude, you're teaching us right now. It just doesn't make any sense. That's why I get upset. I get, like, heated on that. Like, me as a teacher, like, I was just teaching. If I'm trying to teach a concept, I want to see that my student can, like, understand the concept, and then they can get creative with it. And I encourage that, for sure. And seriously, like, obviously, I don't know as much about this as Jacob does, but I'm pretty sure any, like, concept that he can come up with has some sort of adjacent thing in this theory textbook that I'm looking at. Or if it doesn't, it's something that can be deduced relatively easily. There's only 12 notes. Like, obviously, when you're talking about, like, microtonal modulation, that's a little different. But, I mean, it does have roots in just, like, regular 12-tet modulation or, like, traditional, like, Western harmony modulation. Like, it's sort of the same ideas. It's just tensions and releases. I feel that it's helpful to first know what tension release feels like in a G7 to C, and then you can understand what tension release feels like in some, like, microtonal thing that you're inventing. Going right to the microtonal stuff, I think it would be the same as a student going right to my fugue without ever learning anything beforehand. It's just way too much, and they will have no idea what they're playing. And even if they can play it, they will play it in a way that is kind of stupid. Is that really the goal, though, to just play it, or do you want to play it with ease and understanding? I feel that that is probably the goal. I'm just rambling again now. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna finish that Chris Cornell video. Don't know why I called him that.
Personally.
Alright, so he's talking about super ultra mega lydian. I feel like maybe we should revisit that. Nah, it's fine. We'll look at more Jacob Collier clips and kind of react to them. Let's just finish Charles's video here.
I'd say the biggest thing that
And let me say, I called Charles a baby, I'm pretty sure, at some point, because he did the whole thing with, like, seeing kids that are, like, better than you at music. That makes you all upset. I don't mean anything by that. Like, I'm just kind of riffing out here. I'm sure that I felt the same way at some point, but I want to not feel that way. And I feel like it's kind of cool to say things like that, and I just want to make it normal to be like, no, dude, like, it's fine. People can just be better than you. You don't have to feel bad about it. That's, like, silly.
I have really learned, or the type of thinking shift that Jacob's music has really helped me with, is, in the simplest terms, harmonic freedom. Now, what I mean by that is when you're growing up and you're learning music, especially when you're learning jazz, there are certain things that you kind of get accustomed to, and over time they can become very difficult to break out of.
So what I'm getting from this, you really appreciate Jacob because he sort of inspired you to break out of your harmonic shackles of schooling and all your teachers who said that you couldn't play this note over this chord or else you're wrong and bad. rad. That's great. Like, anecdotally, for you, that's great. And I believe you that he's inspired you to do that. Something that I want to reiterate, and this is something that Jacob has said in both videos that we've watched of him. Because in the first video on Wired, he said he was doing like a cool thing, and then he says like, you're not going to find this in the books. And then we heard that other video of Jacob said like, your instructors won't tell you to do this. But I think in order to first break out of that box, it's important that you have a box that you're in. Like, I don't think you would find Jacob Collier as meaningful to you now if you didn't master the fundamentals like it seems like you have. I just want to really appreciate that for a bit. Like, it's cool to break the rules, but the people who get to enjoy breaking the rules are the people who have put in the work to actually learn and master these rules that we're talking about, you know?
I can play a chord progression, and you can probably think of 8,000 different songs that you've heard it in.
You'd be surprised. I'm at Fly Me to the Moon and that's it. How lame, right? How are we gonna spice this up?
Basic harmonic structures that are widely used in jazz, it can be very, very, very easy to feel locked into them. A lot of standards and a lot of the Great American Songbook didn't really deviate that much from a lot of the standard chord progressions that jazz musicians tend to know the best.
That's true. I mean, a lot of the songs, like, I'm not like a jazz or anything, but I'm pretty sure a lot of those songs can pretty much just be summed up into a series of 5/1s. But it's really just about how much stuff you want to add to the 5, which is pretty much what I assume is going to be everything that we're about to hear.
Biggest thing I took away from Jacob with learning a lot about his approach and learning a lot about how he kind of thinks about music is it really made me more comfortable removing that boundary in my head and being willing to try things that I would not have normally tried. Like, be willing to move from E flat to A in some way, and just be open to that sound. What can that sound like? How can that sound interesting?
How could tritones ever be interesting? That's what I mean. I feel like he picked E flat to A, like, specifically because it's a very dissonant interval. But that dissonant interval is like the single most important interval for harmony and movement in harmony. How could you think to do that? It's like, I don't know, it seems like a pretty obvious choice, honestly. Doing something with tritones.
Be something like
Can anybody get mad at me if I call this random chords? Nice movement. I like that. Yeah, no, it's good that Jacob inspired you to do that, but I would bet that a lot of this stuff was already inside of you, and sometimes we just need that reminder to tell us that we can actually do anything that we want. And there are people like that in my life that serve as that. They just kind of remind you that, like, hey, you can do this. Like, that was actually something I experienced in my lesson with Brandon the other day. I would see him play stuff, and it was so effortless and easy, and it almost served as a reminder, like, you know, you can play that, like, without much effort. And I've actually been, like, using that in my playing. Like, you can just, like, relax. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It's cool when people can show you what's possible. It just makes it easier once you've seen it done. It just does. Like, this is a phenomenon across, like, everything. Like, in sports, like, we always, like, keep breaking records, and then once a record's broken, that same record can get broken, like, really easily after that. Just because when people see that it's possible, there's no longer this mental block that you, like, can't do it or it's this big thing. I mean, that's why musicians get better and better. That's why we end up with people like Jacob Collier, because now we know that Jacob Collier exists. Somebody can come along just like that, and it's not that weird because one of them already exists, like a multi-instrumentalist, insane, pitch-perfect singer who, like, does, like, microtonal crap. We know that that's a thing that exists now, so you can just do that. Like, you can raise your kid to be Jacob Collier if you want. So yeah, it's nice to have people to remind you to do that. That's my only point there. And by the way, Jacob Collier is our teacher in this case, and he's telling us that we can do whatever we want. What does that mean, Jacob? What do you say the teacher won't tell you? You're talking about university teachers, I assume. But I feel like that's not fair, because there's, like, a strict curriculum, and that curriculum is foundational for this music that we're playing. So I don't really see the point of, like, hating on that. I'm just a college bootlicker, if you couldn't tell. It's because I'm going to school. I'm trying to get a scholarship. I promise I'll be a good boy, and I won't ask any questions if you just let me in for free, please. I think I've said everything I wanted to say. Yeah, you know, not that it was that crazy. Hopefully I didn't hurt anybody's feelings too much with this one. And, you know, feel free to try to hurt my feelings in the comment section. I really appreciate that. But yeah, you know, that was my reaction to this video and some Jacob Collier videos. I kind of want to watch some other ones and maybe actually like deep dive into them and sort of figure out what he's talking about. I feel like I didn't give that one Jacob Collier video the proper respect to actually like figure out really what he's doing. I just kind of like made a bunch of assumptions and then just went through it. I think I was going off on a whole bunch about how like Jacob didn't invent like negative harmony. That's not the point. Nobody really invented anything like nowadays. Like of course everything's been like sort of discovered in a sense. But it can't be denied that Jacob has definitely popularized these like kind of obscure like techniques for like reharm. And I think if Jacob disappeared or just never existed, things would be a little boring. I feel like Jacob does a lot for the music community, and it's pretty crazy how popular he is for how in the weeds his music is, because his music is very much in the weeds. So that's like a testament to just, I think, his personality probably, and his personality that one shines through like in his just like brand and how he presents himself, and then also the music too. So that's pretty commendable. Obviously he knows his stuff more than I could ever know. To say he can't learn anything else is ridiculous, but he does definitely know his stuff more than I ever will. I feel like that's not really a question, and nor does it pain me to say that, because it's just like obvious. I feel like I need to say it though, because commenters. And yeah, ultimately he's an interesting guy, he's fun to react to, and I'm going to react to more of them. I'm gonna get all freaking worked up over it, and it's gonna be fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy myself here on Sore Hands. Anywho, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. If you made it this far, I mean, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and of course, if you want some classical guitar lessons, reach out, email in the description. If you want some classical merch, buy some. Head on down over to Rootin's Delight, that's where you can buy it, it's in the description. And, you know, leave some questions, I'll answer it in the podcast, and that's it. All right, I'll see you in the next one.